Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Lenko show. I'm back again today with Chris. Say hello, bro.
Hello, everybody.
Very lovely stuff. So we are now on episode number 32. It feels like it's flown pretty quickly, really. I don't really know where it's all gone, but we've had 31 quality episodes, in my opinion. Well, maybe more the ones that have just been guest interviews. They've definitely been good. Very, very good. Hopefully you've enjoyed them. Chris, have you listened to them? No, I don't know why I asked you. I know it's a no. So today, anyway, in the podcast, what we're going to cover, we're going to go through a couple of interesting topics, possibly a few provocative ones, as usual. Number one, this is going to be quite easy. Should you stretch? Should you stretch? So a question that I have had asked, should you stretch? The return of gyms, we'll discuss that briefly. I know we've already done an episode on that, so we won't be on that for too long. And then we're going to be discussing touchy subject, transgender sport.
Oh.
So, but before we do get into any of that, Chris,
why is that touchy?
Well, because people can get very offended very easily. So
listen,
we need to
Alex,
be careful where
if you want to fit in, that is fine.
Hey, we'll be on eggshells. We'll be on eggshells. I can guarantee. Anyway, all complaints, please send them to chris@lenkohq.com.
Yes, that will work very well for you all.
They will be dealt with. So anyway, before we get into that, Chris, we've got an update for you. And this is going back to a story that we discussed. I think it was in one of the first episodes, possibly even maybe the second episode with yourself. Do you remember the bodybuilder, Yuri Toloshko? I think I pronounced that correctly.
Yuri Toloshko.
Who from Kazakhstan, and he married a sex doll.
Oh, Yuri!
Yuri,
my friend, how are you doing?
Update on Yuri and his wife Margot. I'm sorry to say, everybody.
No.
They are now divorced. They have ended their relationship. They have ended their relationship. He said that Margot broke and needed to go to a shop for repairs.
She broke.
She broke, and she's had to go to the shop for repairs. Yuri has apparently, while she was there, Yuri was unfaithful to his doll with a different object.
What, like a lamp or something?
It doesn't say specifically, but apparently he now has a new wife. So essentially, she went to get repaired. She went to get...
hang on.
And to get mended. Think about her as being hospitalized, and while she was going through that process, he's now kind of traded her in for what I can only describe as a bigger version.
You know what? That is absolutely disgusting. She's there going through a traumatic experience, hospitalized, he's unfaithful, and then gets married to someone else.
Yeah, Lola, to be precise. She's a bit bigger. He's gone for a bigger woman this time, a bigger version.
Well, hang on a minute. So when I never asked this, but when we actually said last time we were talking about it, and you said a doll, are we talking like a little, like not even up to your knee from the floor kind of doll?
No. We're talking like human size, like life.
Oh, right. Okay. It's just because you said that the new one is bigger.
Yeah, no, the new one, she's bigger. Like, think about, she weighs heavier.
Right.
Thicker build.
Right.
She's a fatter version.
Right. More air in.
Anyway, I'm not even sure if I should read this. Screw it, I'm going to do it. This is his description of his new wife, Lola. Now, for any ladies listening, let me know how you would feel if your husband...
Wait, do we know where Margot is now?
Chris, why are you so hung up on Margot?
Is she single?
Come on. So, for any ladies listening, you'll have to let me know what you think, if your husband described you in this way. But here we go. Lola has a woman's head a chicken's body. The navel has depth and can be used as a vagina and a penis inserted into it. I will show you this one day. That's what he says. That's not me. I'm not going to show you, but that's what he said. This is Yuri himself. Then he says, I identify her as a massive chicken. So I think the poultry of the world need to be slightly concerned. Anyway, then he goes on to say, remember my chicken experiment? So then I really liked it and I wanted such a sex toy. I also decided that I would have a harem. Not sure what that is. I also talked about this before. There may be many of us in our family and it's a thrill. And he says, P.S. We broke up with Margot. I'm not ready to talk about the reasons for the divorce yet. So it obviously cuts pretty deep. Maybe, something went on behind closed doors. Anyway, he says, I don't want Margot to break down again, and that means I have to unload her. I decided that I could have several wives. This tradition exists in some Eastern cultures. I am currently considering two options. I got acquainted online with another sex doll. I even decided to fly her, meet her. She lives in Moscow, but they didn't let me out of the airport because of the quarantine. Apparently, these sex dolls quite clearly are radioactive when it comes to COVID. Yeah, so that's the latest on Yuri, Chris.
I've got two different trains of thought at the minute.
Yeah, go on. So, let's make it quick so that we can get onto some actual useful information.
So, number one is there's just they're very subtle and they're very small, but there's a couple of things that indicate there might be something wrong with this man. Right? Maybe wrong isn't the right word, but I'm thinking.
I don't know. I mean, by the sounds of it, he's having sex with chickens.
So this leads me on to number two.
Okay.
So as I was listening to you say that, I was thinking, Alex, this is our podcast. This is what we're talking about. This is us, man. This is us. Oh, wow. You
said there were two things. What's the other one?
The first one was that there's just a couple of things that aren't quite firing correctly for this lad. I don't think.
What, in between his ears?
What? In between his ears and his dolls, yes.
So I mean, I know you say this is a bit weird because it's our podcast, but I think we're all about trying to understand human mindset, behavior, why people behave in certain ways and why they do the things they do. Can you answer me the question, why do you think Yuri has such a habit?
Well, there can be a plethora of things going on here, but I would suggest he's not really getting the things that he really wants from life from the places that he really does need to be getting them from. Hence, he's projecting certain feelings and emotions and other things onto stuff that's not even conscious. I mean, you could argue it and this is very touching now. This is the first step to a guy going to I don't know, cartoons or something like that.
What do you mean by that?
I think if he's on dolls now, he's on his second doll now. He's thinking of having a few more. There's a chance it's not going to stop with dolls, is what I'm saying.
So you think this is the beginning of something else, something more?
I think he needs to actually, rather than. So I think what people might do is they might go, no, this is what he wants. This makes him happy. We should accept this, which sounds lovely, but actually it's not solving a problem at all. If there's an actual underlying problem that needs resolving there to actually help him get better, in quotations, because maybe he is really happy and that is what he really wants, then that should happen before it gets worse.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a fine line, isn't there, between, you do what makes you happy, but then surely there's a case of, well, I mean, I'm just going to say it. It's just fucking weird. Just stop being a weirdo. Like, behave like a human. Like, conduct yourself in a manner that is useful as a human being. Like, if you're, going to produce other little humans, I'd say he's probably not a person that should be doing that.
This is us treading on eggshells.
Yeah, this is us on eggshells. Yeah, but I mean, he's not going to be able to do that in his current situation. But I think you're right. I think in terms of, there's clearly love or attention that he wants that he's not getting from areas that would be more useful. I mean, I don't know how a doll reciprocates feelings and emotions. Anyway, good luck to Yuri. I think that will be the last we hear from him. I'm not going to give him any more attention. Don't think it deserves it or warrants it.
No, I'd like continued updates on him.
Absolutely no. No. You want to go and get updates on it, go and follow him on Instagram. The only reason
Christ, no.
I would point out I don't follow him. That's for some reason, because obviously I've looked at that information before when it popped up. Facebook and its algorithm and its wisdom has decided again. Which what I will add, by the way, and I think this is important because it was a conversation. See, we're going down a real sidetrack here. I was having a very interesting conversation the other day with another coach, and we were discussing how my personal belief is that there would be far fewer problems around in the world if social media did not exist. So for that reason, I am taking, I would say a break off social. I mean, I know Thierry Henry, I nearly said Thierry Henry. Thierry Henry, the footballer, has kind of binned off social media until they improve their stance on racism. I think he should just be gone. Get rid of it. Have done with it. So I'm not going to be using it for any personal reasons. I will only be using it for various business-related things. And that is it. So what's your take on social media, Chris? Go
on. So I was just looking up Yuri then. I used that time to look up Yuri. Yeah, I agree. I think that there are vast benefits to gain from social media, access to information and things like that. But yeah, it all depends on how you use it.
Well, you say access to information. I would disagree.
Well, so this is it. So it like you choose what you've got access to. If you're just like following friends and then celebrities and stuff, you're not really going to find anything useful on there. You might see some pictures of your friends, which you might enjoy, but you're not really going to find anything useful. Whereas if you're following, I know for me, I follow physiotherapists, nutritionists, doctors, there's the occasional celebrity for sure, friends, but people that inspire me and stuff like that, and people that I can learn from as well. So I've always got access to information, stuff that I don't know.
I think that's a top tip for social media. Go and follow people who can actually contribute and not just look at bodybuilders that marry sex dolls. Anyway, back to the main question, the main topic for today. Should you stretch?
Oh, Christ. Well, I tell you what, I can simplify this into one swift second. Yes.
Funnily enough, that was my answer. So this is from the question where this was an S&C coach, apparently, that claims people only need to stretch to address weak muscles in the body, and that people should focus on strengthening weakness rather than stretching. I mean,
he's a terrible S&C coach.
Yeah, I think that was more
based on literally just principle of what he's just said.
Yeah,
I always think when I hear things like that and see things like that, I always think, what do you see like elite level athletes doing? Because obviously general public won't do the same stuff, but the elite level athletes do it because that is the best thing to do for them. So you would do a condensed version or a variation of whatever they do that would work for you and your lifestyle. If we look at like Olympic weightlifters or CrossFit athletes, like Olympic weightlifters are powerful, strong, ridiculously like powerful physiques, like very, very lean. Unless you're obviously looking at the ones that are like 600 kilos, in which case not necessarily lean, but they're strong, they're powerful, they're healthy, and they're performing at the top of the game. Like the amount of mobility and stretching that they do, I mean, I guess it's slightly different because the amount of loading that they're putting on their body. But then if you look at CrossFit athletes as well, which obviously the sport itself has taken a little bit of a turn recently because they're concentrating more on the actual health and longevity side of it. They always prioritize you doing a warm up with mobility, stability exercises, and a cool down at the end. Like, so, and they're doing that specifically for people who are training for health, longevity, and performance as well. So anything that argues otherwise is kind of silly. And also for me, from personal experience, obviously I did a while of bodybuilding where I was just lifting really, really heavy weights, and your warm up consisted of light sets going into heavy sets. That's what it was. And your cool down, you didn't bother with that because you didn't need that. And it just smashes your joints and tendons until your range of motion starts to deplete because you're not still doing mobility work, you're not stretching. And then all of a sudden, like you're fixed in one position for like 3 days straight, and you can't move anywhere because that's just where your body performs now. Because you ain't stretched it, you ain't stretched anything, so you're stuck.
And I think, like you said, that's where program balance becomes so important, because if you are bodybuilding, think about the movement patterns that you're doing. Most of the exercises that you'll be doing, especially upper body, if you're pushing and pressing, you're going to be using an awful lot of internal rotation, a lot of anterior deltoid, to the part where you actually become somewhat kyphotic. And if you're jammed up in that position, you increase the tonality of all those muscles that you're using on the front side versus your posterior chain, which probably gets very little attention and probably should actually get more attention for general posture and health reasons than you do on your front side, your anterior side. Go on, you were going to...
Yeah, so I'd like to interject by telling you, so there's a video on YouTube, and it is the best video on the internet. All right, so you need to put this in your show notes, Alex, and you need to watch it. But it's Olympic weightlifting squat versus powerlifting squat.
Right.
And it shows Olympic weightlifters. They've got their, what do they call them? Like their training singlets or whatever they've got on. There's no straps. There's no belts. There's no chalk or extra gear or supplements or slapping on the back or screaming at yourself. It's just man and squat rack, and of all things, the Champions League music, right? It's the best video on the internet. And he drops down all the way to the floor, comes back up, chest nice and upright, mobility's absolutely perfect, glutes going below parallel, hips are dropping below knees, he's upright, straight back up, no problems whatsoever. Then it swaps to the powerlifting squat, and it starts off, I mean, this is irrelevant, but it's the female world record in powerlifting, and she's all strapped up. She's got a belt on. She's got chalk on. It's screamo music. It's like heavy metal. Someone gives her a big belt on the back and she's like screaming. She gets underneath the bar, moves about 2 inches, like in a sumo position as well. So the feet are really, really wide to help her steal like range of motion, which, by the way, if you stretched and you were mobile enough, you wouldn't have to steal range of motion. That's the point. She drops about 2 inches, come back up. And then it literally just contrasts between the two. And it shows the Olympic weightlifters doing their squats, perfect mobility, perfect stability. The body's working as it's supposed to work. No extra accessories required, no injuries, no problems with health or blood pressure or anything like that. and then it contrasts that with the powerlifter, who is, I guess, the opposite end of the spectrum on that particular conversation.
Brilliant. So we're going to kick off and offend powerlifters as well now.
Hey, listen, I love lifting heavy weights, but if anyone who is currently annoyed at me for saying this, watch the video and you will understand.
Right. Well, we'll make sure that we pick that out in the show notes. One of my favorite phrases is, so that, like, if you're warming up squat depth and literally going through what you're talking about there, and you see someone do it, maybe just with an empty bar, and then they go, oh yeah, I just need some weight on the bar to essentially force you into the bottom position of your squat. Like, that would just tell me as a coach that your body is fighting tension and forces, and it's holding a lot of tension in it already that is preventing you from accessing full range of movement at the ankle and full range of movement at the hip, whilst being able to actually stabilize your spine. That in itself is going to be a problem. And if we relate this back to, talk about the podcast I did with Sam Ruddock, where we were discussing, some of the things that he would do with his guys, like saying, for running backs or whoever it is, if they're tight, if they're tense and they're feeling a bit of a hamstring strain, it might be, right, you're going to go and foam roll, you're going to get range of movement into your hammies, your hips, get your glutes fired up, and then come back and run. The difference that makes between going from so stiff and tight and sticky, trying to perform a high velocity movement such as running, which, let's be frank, running will do a lot of damage to your body if you are not physically prepared for it. Like, the forces associated through your ankles, your knees, your hips, going into your lower back, if your body isn't aligned and in the right positions in the first place, that's going to be a problem. Not only that, but if you're tight and sticky, then your firing patterns are going to be off. So your positioning's off, your firing patterns are going to be off. You're going to be using muscles to pull through and strike the ground and propel you forwards that should not be the dominant muscles. Like, your hamstring should not be the dominant hip extensor. Your lower back should not be the dominant extensor through that. Like, it should be your glutes that are firing. And the only way that you can achieve that is if the hips are loose enough in the first place. So if your hip, if you think, we'll go back to the most common position that we're all in, more often than not, and possibly you might be in right now. If you're sat down and you're flexed at the hip, your hip flexors, the tonality is increased. It's not like a switch. It's not just on off. The tonality on that is increased. And while the tonality in your hip flexors is increased, your glutes tonality is going to be decreased. And we've got to restore some form of balance to help bring the joints into the right position so that movement can then flow.
Yeah, I think a good measure of someone's health and performance and an indicator of whether or not someone's going to hurt themselves or not is, can they perform or can they execute a high quality overhead squat? If they can, their life is probably going to be easier. They'll be able to do things easier. They'll be able to do things better. Like when it comes to training or anything like that, they won't have as much pain. They won't experience as much pain getting out of bed or walking around or running around. They're far more likely to be in a much more comfortable position with the body.
Yeah. And you ultimately, you choose your own pain and suffering. You can either go through the pain and suffering of, training hard, training right, lifting weights, doing the stretching, and, essentially, I say suffer. I mean, it's not all suffering. It is pleasurable. It is enjoyable. You can get into it, versus the lifetime of suffering through having not stretched, having never lifted weights, and then being immobile and having completely jacked up joints into later years. Choose your pain. Choose your pain. The other thing that I would say to bear in mind is that you cannot activate yourself into a range of movement. You can't. So that's that. I don't know why are you laughing there. That's brought a little tickle to you, hasn't it? Go on.
I'm just I'm thinking about whenever people talk about this. I was doing this with Chris Warren once. So if someone's listening to this and they've not heard me mention Chris Warren yet, the man is a human computer. He knows so much about so many things, all the things that you should know things about and all the things that he does know things about, which is strength and conditioning. And he was explaining it in an education once to some of our guys, and he was saying, if your glutes weren't, someone was explaining, it was like a typical like booty band sort of workout sort of thing, and they were talking about how you need to activate your glutes and stuff like that. And he's like, so what exactly do you mean by activate? And they explained what you just said, but they were explaining like your glutes aren't firing. And he said, let me show you what would happen if your glutes weren't firing. So he stood up, started to go into a hinge position, and then just fell over. He was like, if your glutes weren't firing at all, you wouldn't be stood up like that. It always just makes me think about that.
Yeah, if your glutes aren't firing, you are just going to fall over. You'd be in a sack of skin on the floor. What I was going to say is that, you know, you can't activate yourself into a range of movement. So if your hips are really tight, you cannot improve your situation by going and doing a load of glute bridges. Won't work. Like, you're better off going through a sequence of, right, I'm going to do a hip flexor stretch to begin with, then I'm going to go and do my glute bridges. So you're going to release off the muscles that are inhibiting movement in the first place to then go and activate and access full range of movement on the opposing muscle. Like, you know, if you want to go down to a really, really simple format, you can think of muscles as working in pairs. Like if you've got biceps and triceps is a really easy one. Biceps bend the arm or bend the elbow, triceps straighten the elbow. One works whilst the other one kind of switches off, in a really, really dumbed down sense of it. But if you think on a more complex level, muscles work in larger groups than that. And even if you are bending the elbow and using your biceps to contract there, the triceps are still contracting to slow down the force of the elbow bending. So that's helping control it. So you're still getting pushes and pulls on both sides. Every muscle around the joint is always active. It's just to what extent and how is that going to influence movement. So should you stretch? Again, the answer is yes. Is there anybody who stretching isn't beneficial for?
Pregnant people.
Pregnant people, yep. And also hypermobile people. So obviously pregnant people do fall into that category, but hypermobility is something which you can assess by doing something called a Beighton score. The Beighton test, where you test multiple joints around the body, your thumb, little pinky finger, your elbows, your knees, and hips and lower back. You'll get a score on there, and that'll either classify you as hypermobile, which just means it's not a problem. It just means that your joints are quite lax and freely movable. So you've got a lot of play. You should be very, very supple. In which case, I would recommend not stretching, and your time would be better suited to actually going and activating and focusing on controlling that range of movement rather than kind of getting fixated on, you know, doing a stretch where you're already very stretchy. And then in terms of sports and performance, the things you need to be aware of there is if you are doing some static stretching and you are increasing availability and range of movement, you then need to go and follow that up with some form of dynamic movement to bridge the gap between the stretch and the high intensity activity. You can't go from stretching straight into your high impact games. You've got to break it down and bridge the gap. Otherwise you will leave yourself open to injury. So you can, by stretching, you will create a little bit more instability around the joint until you rebalance it and you control that movement pattern. Anything more for you to add on stretching, Chris?
No. I think, well, actually, yeah, I suppose the only last thing, I'm just thinking of a conversation I had with somebody the other day when they were saying about having to squat a certain way or having to deadlift a certain way because they get pain if they don't do it like the quotation correct way, full range of motion. And I think like, and I know you teach this in some of your educations that you do with you and stuff like that, like your body will become stable in the range that you're training it in. So you could get good at doing a quarter squat, for example, or whatever range it is, and you can get strong there. But the second you leave that range, when you're put in an extended range from that with a weight like that, your body is far more susceptible to injury, which is another reason why you want to be stressing to make sure you can maintain that range. And ultimately, like the further you can move that weight through a fuller range of motion, the stronger you are. So if you are looking to be strong, why would you move it this far when you could in reality be moving it that far if you were more mobile? You would be far stronger and your body would be far safer.
Yeah.
It's just another one for people to think about.
Yeah. So movements are built into the nervous system. Very, very simply, movements are built into the nervous system, and you utilize your nervous system. Think of that as your pilot. So your nervous system is the pilot, that's your level of skill within the movement. And then you've got in your joints, you've got various supporting structures such as ligaments and tendons to control or kind of provide an end range barrier for you. So think about it as like you're driving down the motorway and you've got the central reservation barrier, or you've got a barrier on either side. When you're driving your car, you don't drive it up against the barrier, do you? You just don't. So you don't hammer your ligaments and tendons, and that's all about the skill level of the driver. Can you maintain your car in the appropriate lane in the center of the carriageway? No, that's what you need to be able to do. That's movement quality. You've got to be able to control it and not just like ram it up against the side of it and smash through it and batter your ligaments and your tendons and completely destroy your joint. That's a bad way to drive.
I also think if anyone's still unsure about the whole stretching thing, like we always talk about this, but toddlers and like young kids and stuff like that, they're not experiencing knee pain while sitting in a perfect full squat. Like if they're not, as an adult, you should realize that somewhere from that point to where you're at now, you've done something that has inhibited your ability to do that.
Or not done something.
Or not done. You've either done something or not done something. And I can guarantee you've probably done something silly and you've not done any of your stretches. You naughty, naughty person.
Use it or lose it. What else was I going to say as well? I was going to say, in terms of being strong and being athletic, going back to the original kind of statement about stretching creates weakness. It doesn't. It really, really doesn't. Like there are, I mean, as you touched on already, it can create the capacity for more strength, especially through a greater range, which is vitally important because you're not always going to be in a fixed position, or you're not always going to be able to get away with your little kind of half squat. Think about sitting on the toilet. You've got to get down to a good squat depth there to be able to sit and relieve yourself. So you can't get away with half range all the time. But as the system flows, there are three key things. The first thing is you've got to make sure your posture is right. So the joints are in the right position. That's the most basic thing. If your joints are in the right position and your car isn't up against the central reservation, you've got a chance. You're not going to do much damage. That then enables you to initiate the right firing pattern and the right sequencing of muscles. So we talked before about if you're sprinting, your glutes need to be the main hip extensor. The hamstrings and the low back then assist and support the movement. They don't drive it. So by being in the right position, by having the freedom and range at the hip, by having loose hip flexors that allow the joint to move, you can maximize utilization of the glutes. You can turn down the activation of the hamstrings a little bit to the point where they're not getting beaten and broken up, and they're able to assist in the movement and be useful. And that then allows you to apply more power. So that's the sequence. It's your posture has to be correct. The joints need to be in the right position. Once the joint's in the right position, you can utilize the right firing patterns and the right sequencing and coding of your muscles. And then you can apply even more power. And again, you think about creating weakness. Well, let's have a look at gymnasts. You've already mentioned Olympic weightlifters, but let's have a look at gymnasts, possibly the most powerful athletes on the planet, pound for pound. Running, flipping, doing multiple cartwheels, and just, I mean, I can't do a cartwheel. My balance is a little bit way off. I'm not very good on my hands. But, you know, you think about pure explosiveness, those guys can move. Like they are.
And look at what it does to their physique as well. Because I think I know from some of the clients that I've worked with in the past, and for myself as well, like I get why you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it because you think, well, how do I maximize the efficiency of my time? I'm in the gym because I want to look better, if that is you. Like, so you either A, training to get bigger, or B, training to get thinner. You wouldn't prioritize stretching. I get it. That's it. But in actual fact, like it's the foundations, isn't it? Like you get the foundations right, and it means you're in a much better position to maximize the gains that you get from your strength lifts and from your fat burning stuff, what have you. So it's funny because it's ironic because people miss it out because they think it's not going to have as much of an effect. Whereas actually, if you did it, and again, from personal experience, if you do the stretching and you do proper warm-ups and you do proper cool downs, like all your results are exponentially far better in whichever one of those you're going for.
Yeah. And, you know, here's the other thing, like what's actually to stop you from doing your stretches in an evening if you start watching TV? Where's the harm in doing that?
I can tell you what it is.
Go on.
It's a 4-letter word. It begins with L, and there's a Z and a Y in there, and there's an A in there as well. And it's not Liza. Laziness. Yeah.
So that, I think that was something that I talked about with Tom Wasley, where we were discussing, and he was saying that, you know, in an evening, that's when he'll crack out the foam roller, he'll just do a bit of rolling and stretching, because the alternative is basically just sat on the sofa doing nothing. And think about, you're actually expending more energy by doing that. You're still moving, your muscles still having to contract against the force of the roller, you're still having to, you know, contract certain muscles to engage more of a stretch. You are using your body, and you're taking it through a new range of movement. So
yeah, I think
do that. It's a little 1%er, but it works.
100%. So I did I don't know if you saw me doing this at yours, but obviously I started using GoWOD because I'm a serial offender of neglecting, historically speaking, I'm a serial offender of neglecting the stretches. I downloaded GoWOD and I started utilizing that. And literally the thing that jams me up the most is obviously doing the workouts like with a load of loading and not doing the efficient stretching. If I'm sat down for a long time, I just get jammed up. Or if I'm laying down for a long time, I get jammed up. One of the times that I do that, if I'm watching telly. So literally you switch that from being one of the worst things for you to being one of the best things for you by now doing your foam rolling and massaging, trigger pointing and stretching while you're watching telly. You've flipped it from being one of the most dangerous things that you're doing to jam your body up to now being one of the best things that you can do.
It's one of the reasons why I bought a standing desk as well, purely because I was spending so much time sat down in my office chair, kind of slumped, taking people through sessions. But now I can, you know, I'm on my feet all the time. I'm stood up. I'm squeezed. Like every so often I think, oh, I'll squeeze my glutes. I'll do a few calf raises. I'll do some hip flexor stretching. And you're moving more. Not only do you burn more energy by being stood up, I think it's an extra 6 calories per hour or something like that. I mean, it's a minute amount, but you add that up for how many hours a day then per week, and then over the course of a year, it's a lot of energy, and you are using your body. Why would you not?
And if we're going into the minutiae of it, if we think about what Jordan Peterson was saying, these 12 rules for life as well, when he talks about lobsters and serotonin, when you stand up straight, I think he talks about stand up straight with your shoulders back. When you stand up, you're producing more serotonin and you feel better.
It's weird, isn't it, how your physiology and just moving your body in a certain way can actually trigger a different mindset.
Yep. So if you sat there feeling awful, feeling bad about yourself, or feeling negative, or feeling victimized or anything like that, and you're in a slumped, negative posture, get yourself up, chin up, look at the world.
Oh, what if we flip that? What if we flip that and just say, look, if you want to go and feel down, if you want to go and feel bad, go and sit in a dark room, turn the lights off, sit on a chair, slump down and look at the floor. Breathe shallow and see how you feel.
Yeah.
Right. So hopefully that covers the question of should you stretch. I think we did get an answer on that, didn't we?
Funnily enough, so I simplified it in less than a second by saying yes, and then we spent about 20 minutes talking about it.
Yeah. So yes, you should stretch unless you are heavily pregnant or hypermobile. And then when you do stretch, if you are stretching for team sport or even athletic sport, if you're doing some static stretching, this is one of my general rules on this. If you actually want to change muscle tensegrity, is that the word?
Good word.
Like
solid word.
I don't know whether it's the word, but I like it as a word. I think
it is now.
We're having it. If you want to change muscle tensegrity and switch the tonality in a muscle, hold your static stretch for 2 minutes as a minimum. 2 minutes. Now, there are certain muscles, like, say, certainly the hip flexors, don't just kind of squeeze and hold that for 2 minutes all the way through. Take that in 5-second bursts, just so you don't kind of develop any sort of tendonitis or issues with the hip there. But 2 minutes for muscle tension and muscle length. Time it with your breathing. Breathing is vital. Breathing is key. And yes, if you are doing it pre-high intensity activity, make sure you have another activity, some dynamic movement, dynamic stretches in there to kind of bridge that gap before you go into your explosive movements and activities.
Just the most Aussie accent in the world.
There was nothing even Australian about that. I don't even know what it was.
Exclusive. I don't know.
No,
but I think
let's be honest. Let's just call that what it was. It was a mistake.
If you haven't stretched before and you do think you need to, you don't need to overcomplicate it. Just literally get yourself in the right position and breathe. That's it. That'll be a good start.
Right. What are we doing on time? Right. Okay. Let's touch on this very quickly. Return of gyms. Chris, you looking forward to going back?
Yes, I am.
What are you going to be working on when you go back into the gym yourself?
You know what, right? So this isn't specifically what I'm working on, but I was thinking this the other day. Someone asked me, he said, what is it you've missed the most? So for me, I've had access to 2 22.5 kilogram dumbbells. That's it. That's all I've got. And I love them to pieces because they've got me through this series of lockdowns, this trilogy of lockdowns. I do love them to pieces, but there's only so many things you can do with 22.5 kilo dumbbells. And if there's one thing that I miss, like wholeheartedly, and I just can't wait to do it again, it's a set of pull-ups. Honestly, I really want to do a set of pull-ups. I really do. But for me, funnily enough, so as I return, I think I said this coming out of the previous lockdown as well, It's going to be general prep stuff. I'm going to fix the imbalances and the postural imbalances and stuff that I will have undoubtedly built from doing nothing but using two 22.5 kilogram dumbbells, which are arguably too light for some movements and arguably too heavy for some movements. But I've done what I can with what I had. And it's going to be GP stuff. And then moving on to some bigger special stuff coming out of that. But I'm not going to announce that just yet. I'm going to leave that a little bit of a surprise for people.
You tease.
I am a tease. I'm a dirty tease.
That's naughty. That's naughty. I bet in your first workout you'll end up using some 22.5s.
Oh, you know what? So I used Steve's garage gym last week, and I was like, I told him I was going to come down, and obviously it's separate from their house. I shouldn't have named him. He's going to hate that people think that he's got a gym and stuff like that now. He's going to be like, bastards. So I used the garage gym, and it had a barbell and all stuff like that. And I walked in and I was like, oh, I just want to do like heavy deadlifts and heavy squats. I really do. So I ended up I didn't do like crazy heavy or anything like that. I did well within what my body was able to do. But that was nice. That'll be the thing that I have to not do. When I first get in and I see access to all the weights, all the machines, my brain and my body will go, I just want to do 5x5 on everything. Max weight. What's my 5 rep max? What's my 3 rep max? What's my one rep max? That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I won't do that. But you're right. I probably will end up using 22.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll have to let us know. You'll have to let us know how that goes.
I will do.
Good. Yeah. So for anyone who is looking forward to getting back to the return of gyms, go and do what you want to do. Go and enjoy it. Go and spend some time working on things that you've not been able to do. If you've spent your lockdown building a really, really good, solid aerobic base, maybe consider going through a bit of a bodybuilding style hypertrophy phase, put on some muscle mass, get doing some of your big lifts again, squats, bench press, deadlifts, overhead presses, get using equipment that you haven't had access to at home, get on the sled, the prowler, carry some heavy ass dumbbells around, use sandbags, med balls, just go and use all the equipment, use all the kit, play with your movements, and enjoy being back in the gym again. Surely that's the best thing to do if you've missed being in the gym.
Without battering yourself.
And don't be worried about going back either. Don't be worried about going back. I know probably a personal belief of mine is that gyms should never have closed in the first place due to them being such well-kept places. Generally, I don't think there were many cases of COVID actually traced back to gyms at all. I think there were just, probably a handful. So don't be concerned. Don't be worried about going into the gym. Look after yourself, obviously. If you've been vaccinated, you're fairly well protected, or you're as protected as you can be. I would possibly still consider avoiding scruffy people. Make sure you sanitize, clean yourself down. Don't go and kind of let anyone breathe on you. Keep to yourself and and enjoy being back in the gym. The last thing that we want to discuss quickly today, and this is just a topic which came up when I was flicking through a few articles, and some of the information that's come my way that I think I don't really think there should be a debate about it, but I know it's something that does happen. So, Chris, here's my question. Transgender sport.
Oh, Christ.
Should males, men who transition to become a female, be allowed to compete in female sports?
This is one of the questions where, like, whatever I say, I'm going to be crucified here.
Let me help you out. So, again, I think it's important that when we're thinking about should males be able, well, essentially males, I know if you want to go and transition from male to female, so be it. Fine, go and do it. It's your decision. It's your life. No one's kind of worried about that. Do what you need to do. I think there's a fine line between accepting people and then putting people at risk in this sense. So if we imagine something like cage fighting or like UFC, the physical combat sports, boxing, not necessarily, things like football, tennis, cricket, etc. But I mean, there is a continuation and crossover on into that. Let's just go through actual statistics and information which can be measured before we start looking into belief systems. Males have 15 times more testosterone than females. So we know the whole issue around steroids in sport and how they should be banned, they shouldn't be allowed. And I even think that athletes who have been banned for testosterone substances should not be allowed to go back in and compete in a clean sport, purely because even though the testosterone might be out of the system and it might have returned to a baseline norm, that particular athlete that did cheat and did take those drugs and put them into the system has had the benefit of having those elevated testosterone levels. So they've built more muscle mass and they've developed even more strength and more power through result of having that in the system. So I think that's a fine line there, but I don't think, again, my personal viewpoint, if you've been a drugs cheat and you've taken testosterone, you shouldn't be allowed back into a clean sport regardless. So males transitioning to female sport, they've already had the benefit of elevated testosterone levels for years. So should that be allowed? I'll let you think about that yourself. Striking power, as in punching, kicking, females have 162% less power. 162% less striking power. In terms of reactive strength, females are 33% lower. Heart rate, or blood pumped per heartbeat, females pump 33% less blood around their body per heartbeat. I don't want this to actually sound like I'm just bashing females here, by the way. There are a lot of ways in which females are better than men in a good variety of things. I'm not going to, I've got information on it, but we can accept that we're not the best at everything. But these are just the statistics that would indicate a not level playing field. So we're going to carry on. Fuck it. Upper body strength. Males, 44% more than females. Again, just as an average. If you even look at top level sport, imagine someone like, UFC, go Brock Lesnar. I dread to think what he would do if he transitioned into female sport. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine Brock Lesnar transitioning into a female sport?
I'm doing my best not to.
Deary me. And then males have 10% greater bone density. So looking at that information there, Chris, would you say it would be fair for a man to transition and call himself a woman and become a woman and then compete and partake in female sport?
No.
I think we've probably cleared that up, really.
But I think there's
go on.
I was going to say there's different ways you can look. I'm sure that some places have already started doing this. And here's an example. I think it was somewhere I don't think it was China, but it was somewhere like that. And they had one male fighter versus 20 female fighters. That was how they'd measured it. And
sounds like something they'd do in China.
And the male won. And it was just, the thing was, based on all those statistics, obviously fighting sports are a little bit different because of all those things, the male is going to be more dominant. he beat 20 females. So if he was then to transition into the female sport, it would just be so easy for him.
Well, I think there might have been a weightlifter in New Zealand who transitioned and then just started cleaning up and breaking all kinds of records.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks for itself as well.
Yeah, I also think like with the transgender stuff, like a lot of it is because, and I don't know this, maybe it'd be worthwhile for me to actually sit down with someone who's transgender and have a one-to-one talk about it. But I know from people that I've spoken to who, what's the correct way of describing this? They felt they were something other than they were.
Mm.
And it was literally that. It was because they felt like they were another gender or whatever you want to call it. And just because you feel that way, I don't think that would. So if I felt like I was a woman, for example, and I felt like I belonged in a women's division in a particular sport, that shouldn't just trump what everyone else thinks and what everyone else feels and mean I'm allowed to just go in that sport and partake, what have you anyway. If there was a division specifically for other people like that were in the same sort of category or what have you, you'd have to start measuring like hormone level. Do you remember the fuss that was kicked up about Caster Semenya?
Mm.
Like, so she actually
I'm not sure that's ever gone away, really.
So she hadn't transitioned, had she? She was a female, but she just had higher testosterone, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
So she literally, she didn't have all those things other than her testosterone levels were higher, and she just destroyed everyone. So if the males had all the other advantages in a sport where those advantages were advantages, they would just destroy everyone. And it would just be a man that feels like a woman. This,
and I think that's something with the Caster Semenya debate. I think she was actually forced to take testosterone reducing medication to actually bring her down to be able to compete at a female level. And I think that probably this is a debate that top level sport needs to have with itself in terms of what do you classify as your competition categories now? Like, is it male and female? Is it based on testosterone levels? Is it based on chromosomes? That's probably a fairer way to go. If you've got XX chromosomes, you only compete against other people with XX chromosomes, regardless of how you fucking feel. Whether you feel like a man or a woman, depending on what your chromosomes are, that's your competition category. XY chromosomes, men compete against men.
You know what I think about? This isn't the exact same thing, but it makes me think about, like, would I have a fight with Pinocchio? Like when he was just a wooden.
How does this relate to you fighting a wooden puppet character?
Because the wooden puppet character feels like a real boy, but he's a wooden puppet character.
Okay, I see where you're going.
And on the flip side of that, I would also say, like, I mean, I'm a guy, so it's not something that I'm going to have to worry about. But if the women in that particular sport were okay with it happening,
imagine if they saw you come in and they thought, "Oh God, I've got to fight Chris."
Do you know what though? The thing is,
or Chrissy.
Listen though. There's going to be women out there that would absolutely hand my ass to me, no doubt about it. There are women out there who would eat me up and spit me out twice over before I even threw a punch or anything like that. Not that I would throw a punch at a woman, but if I was in a fight against a woman, I'm guaranteed there are many, many, many out there that would absolutely destroy me. If they thought it was okay to come up against a man in a fight, then yeah, their decision. But otherwise, I just think, like, in most things, let's say, well, most sports, not all, but physical sports, males are at an advantage biologically, physiologically. So they are more likely to win.
And I think this is the thing, isn't it? Like the very top elite women would kick the ass of a lot of the most average guys. 100%. No doubt about that. But the divide at the top of the sport, like you think, I know we mentioned Brock Lesnar as just an absolute beast. the guys who are at the top of that sport and at the very elite, that gap is so wide. Like, even if it was the elite male versus the elite female, there's a very wide gap there. But you get below the top level of the cream of the elite female category. After that, it's just, well, it would be your one male Chinese fighter versus the 20 females. It would be an absolute massacre. So I think there is a question to be answered further down the line, not by us, but how to make sport fair and competitive, and not single people out, because I think it's something that we've spoken about multiple times on the podcast before, where we talk about, all the benefits that you do gain from sport. So it's there, it should be enjoyed by everybody, and people shouldn't be left out. 100% people should not be left out. There should be something for everyone in sport. So,
but is it? So you would have to start deciphering who competes at what level based on, I don't know, whatever their weight was, or their physical capacity, or whatever their hormones levels were, or what have you. And like, that is the only way that you'd then be able to decipher it.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I feel like we've navigated that in quite a good way.
We've probably upset someone somewhere, but I feel we did our best. And if we have upset someone, feel free to explain why. Because maybe we just don't understand enough yet, which is more than likely.
Absolutely. Anyway, Chris, I'll let you sign us off.
It's been so long. I don't even know what to say. Thank you to everyone for listening. Continue supporting us. I think the last time I spoke to everyone was the 4x4x48.
Yeah, it will have been.
It's nice to see you all. It's nice to see all your faces.
We've not actually recorded too many episodes since then, so you've only had one episode off.
Do you know what? I'll explain to everyone what happened to me after that. So about 3 days later, I went out for a run. I was doing 5 intervals of 3 minutes, like hard pace. Say hard, like 70% pace. Not trying to kill yourself, but not going easy. 1.5 minute rest. So it was 2 to 1 work to rest 5 times. And I felt like quite a few niggles. My knees obviously hadn't fully recovered. Felt something wrong with my ankle. So I got in, took my shoes and socks off, and it must have been the first time that I properly looked at myself, or my lower limbs anyway, since that 4x4x48, and my ankles were swollen, both of them, and I had quite a few blisters on both feet as well. So yeah, I thought I'd got out of it, but yeah, my feet were pretty messed up from it. But yeah,
you did it. You got through it.
Yeah, we got through it. Sorry about that little tangent, everyone. My point there was I've not seen you since then, so it's nice to see all your faces. I know I can't actually see your faces. It's just a joke. You'll be fine. I hope you've learned something from this particular episode. We have, if you listen carefully, there is something about stretching in there. There's something about don't go playing with dolls. And I hope we have imparted a level of wisdom here. I hope you enjoy your Easter, because it is Easter as of when you are listening to this, and we will see you all again soon. Live long and prosper. Lenko out.
Well said. Very well said.